or third complaint I've seen from Mr. Miles. This seems to be something I'm unclear as what he claims, other than a general analysis under the preamble, which I thought we had discussed earlier with the treasurer's office as to this board's sort of reluctance, at least at that time, to entertain going through how the office does business rather than a clear violation of the ethics ordinance. So I was recommending dismissal without prejudice.
All right, any comments from the board members? Yes, Dr. Carnell.
So Mr. Miles knows that he has the right to come here and discuss his claim.
Well, I don't know that he necessarily has the right, the way the process was structured. I mean, I think the initial question is whether he has stated a viable complaint under the ethics ordinance. Now, if deny the recommendations or you want to hear from him, then he has the right to come. But the initial, sort of as I understood the process, the initial recommendation sort of comes from me as to whether there's a viable claim under the ethics ordinance.
Yes, Ms. Lucero.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to address that, you know, he knew that we were going to be discussing this today, and this is a public, open meeting. He could have came today.
Because in the past, we have not, through the chair, if someone shows up,
Right.
we've allowed them to state their case to the extent that they can. But he's laid out a pretty detailed analysis, albeit much of it unrelated to the ethics ordinance. That really, I was having a hard time, other than there was a complaint about how he was treated at the counter by the clerk's office.
Did he know about today's meeting? Do we know? Or has there been further communication with him?
Not from me.
And he was notified that we received his complaint and everything, that he, I mean, you had some initial contact with him with respect to the complaint that was received.
Complaints come in through the office. Go ahead, Mr.
Through the chair, he hand delivered that complaint to me, and I took him upstairs, we time stamped it, and that was it.
All right, so what's your recommendation at this time, Mr. Williams?
Dismissal without prejudice.
At this point, we have a recommendation. Is there a motion to adopt Mr. Williams's recommendation?
I am going to put a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Moving on to our next item on our agenda under new business, item D, which is number 3. We have 2 communications from John Pascaris and one regarding the Department of Public Services, both public services employees each. Okay, at this point, did everyone receive the communication from Mr. Pascaris?
Yes.
And has everyone had the opportunity to review his complaints? Are these official complaints or are these just emails, Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
They are complaints, okay.
Yeah, they are. There were initially, through the chair, communications by email. He did respond to my queries that he had to actually submit the complaints, and so he did submit the complaints on the complaint form, laying out what his complaint was in terms of what was happening and what it looks like the city of Canton.
All right, at this time, are there any comments from any board members? Any questions, concerns regarding the complaints submitted by Mr. Pascaris? Dr. Carnell, excuse me.
No, I don't have any questions, and I believe the recommendation from Mr. Williams is that we dismiss without prejudice.
Yes, that was the recommendation. Again, his complaint appeared to be more of an operational issue in terms of how the Department of Public Works was dealing with retention ponds and licensure of those ponds in the city of Canton. I'm not sure that that's an ethics violation, although he may see it as them not doing their job. Again, it was back to the preamble of the ordinance and his belief that the preamble created this enforceable doctrine that the ethics board should apply to these employees. So I recommended dismissal without prejudice.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Actually, do we have an official motion to adopt the recommendation?
For the record, I made the motion to support the recommendation of Mr. Williams to dismiss without prejudice.
And that motion was seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, so moved. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, still under new business, item number 4, we have an inquiry from Ms. Katie Rogowitz. I apologize, I'm not pronouncing that name correctly. Did everyone receive the communication from Ms. Rogowitz, and have everyone had the opportunity to review it?
Yes.
And is there any questions right now for the board, from any board members regarding the communication? Mr. Williams, did you have any opportunity to reach out to Mrs. Rogowitz regarding her communications, her concerns?
I did have initial communication with Ms. Rogowitz indicating that if she wanted to make a complaint, she had to use the form. I sent her a copy of the ordinance as well as the complaint form. I should say Ms. Rogowitz communicated extensively. What you have, I think, is a portion of what she submitted, because she submitted transcripts and a fair amount of information from her existing criminal case of sorts that is out there. This is not, I don't believe there was anything that this board could have done if it had been submitted, but right now there's really no way that we could entertain it because she has not submitted a complaint form. And I was a little careful about reaching out to her more than I should, because she actually has an attorney, Michael Rata, that's representing her in her action.
So at this point, do you have any recommendation for the board regarding her communications?
Well, I believe this one has to be dismissed without prejudice to her bringing the complaint at some later date, but at this point, she hasn't formally submitted a complaint. She has not submitted the complaint form. She merely sent an email.
Ms. Buciero?
Well, is there anything really to dismiss?
No, there really isn't.
Yes, Dr. Carnell.
So I wonder if the motion is that the board will not, it escaped my mind, move further on this due to lack of official documentation? Or do we need a motion at all?
Well, I think the board has received the communication, acknowledged receipt of the communication, and then find that there's no jurisdiction to address it further. So I think you can move to say there's no basis on which the board can address it further.
Okay, so is that your official recommendation?
That's my official recommendation.
Okay. All right, I think all board members have heard Mr. Williams' recommendation to the board at this time regarding the communication from Mrs. Rogowitz. And is there a motion to adopt the recommendation? This
So
time?
moved.
Is there a second? Support. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Moving on to the next item of our agenda. We're still under item number D, which is new business. We have number 5, an inquiry from Mr. Joseph Fletcher. Again, as all the board members had the opportunity to receive the inquiry from Mr. Fletcher. Yes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review that inquiry? Yes. At this time, is there any concerns, any comments from any board members regarding the communication or inquiry from Mr. Fletcher? Let me just ask this, Mr. Williams is, as the chair, is this just an inquiry from him? Is he just asking us a question?
It was basically just an inquiry as to basically almost an advisory opinion that appeared to be quasi-related to what we heard at the end of last year from some of the clerks in the Wayne County Clerk's office. Because if you look at, on the flip side of the actual, my email, there's an email at the bottom of the page. Is it ethical for a manager of the Wayne County Clerk's office to be acting personnel as well? This appears to be a conflict of interest in enforcement of fair labor practices within the clerk's office. So it was more a question, and he's seeking an advisory opinion, and advisement that the board, I wasn't authorized to give, the public advisory opinions. If he wanted to file a complaint, there was a process. So we addressed it, but it was just seemingly that question was raised, inquiry.
Yes, Ms. Becerra.
So are you recommending that we handle this in the same way we did the
Yes,
previous?
yes, the same manner as Ms. Rogowitz. Acknowledge receipt, and it really doesn't rise to the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board to address it any further.
Before we move to whether or not there's to a motion, who is Mr. Johnson? I see this is from Mr. Johnson to Mr. Slezak. Who is Mr. Johnson? Do we know who that is?
Through the chair, I don't, because there are times when we have received emails from names that are actually different than the person who sends it to us, essentially, essentially electronically signs it. So that might be the case.
Yes, occasionally the email address, they'll be using someone else's email address, communicating through that email address without necessarily having their name in the email signature or the email address.
Yeah, we had that like with the Ms. Lynham complaint last year. She basically was using a different name, on a different email account.
Okay, I understand. All right, well, at this time, is there a motion to adopt Mr. Williams' recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to concur with the recommendation of Mr. Williams based on the information provided.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, moving on to the next item of our agenda, which is item E, which is such other matters as may be properly submitted before the board at this time. This time, do we have any other matters before the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Not a
Young.
specific matter as such, but I noticed that Judge Thomas, I guess, will no longer be part of this committee, and I know he has served over a period of time, so I hope there's something that can be expressed to him, the thanks and his volunteering his time to be part of this committee in his absence, or his no longer appearing here will be certainly missed by, at least by me, and I'm sure by everybody. I shouldn't say that. So
Absolutely.
I'd like to communicate that to him if I can. I found him to be certainly a pleasure to be in front of. When he was on the bench, didn't always agree with everything I said, but that's not the condition for which we make our judgments.
I think that's all.
Found him to be
judges.
wrong a few times, but certainly a gentleman, and certainly did his work, and he brought that to the ethics committee. So I'm going to miss him.
I have to concur. Do we have official word on that? That officially, do we know that that's the official?
Through the chair, when I sent out the email last week to the board to basically to see about availability for this week, he had reached back out to me and said that he had not heard yet from the executive's office. I reached out to the executive's office, and what I was told by email was that that the seat will be unfilled for February, and they would likely have somebody in place by March. And that was the extent of it.
Okay. All right, and like I said, I can concur with the sentiments. I did have the opportunity to speak to Judge Thomas yesterday, and he expressed the same as well. He was still sort of in limbo as to whether or not he's still going to join the board or what decisions are going to be made. There's been some back and forth. I did express to him how much of a pleasure it was to serve with him and how honored I was to serve with him on this board. So is there some sort of mechanism? Can we do some sort of official commemoration or some sort of commemorative plaque or something for Mr. Thomas for his years of service? I mean, he brought a lot of experience and I would say prestige to the board. And I definitely concur with the sentiments that was held here. Is there something that we can do officially for him? Or
It's not really established in the ordinance, but it'd be probably at the will of the board, I guess. I mean, we really don't have a budget for like a plaque or anything like that. But it's at the will of the board, what the board would like to do, so.
Well, at this time, might be a little premature too, because since we don't know officially, the chair can entertain a motion to table it until the March meeting when we'll officially know the results, and then we can possibly take it up again at that meeting. Any other concerns or questions on it this time? I want to thank Mr. Young for bringing that up to the board's attention as well. So at this time, is there a motion to table this matter regarding Judge Thomas and his appointment to the board until the next meeting?
If it's appropriate to do that, I'd make a motion to table it, and maybe if I may, Mr. Chair, ask Joe if he can spend a little bit of time maybe checking on and see what we can do. Maybe a resolution or something from the county, even the county commission. Judge Thomas has been part of the county for decades, as we all know, so
Yeah, I will.
if possible.
I will inquire,
I'm
yeah.
not looking to add to your job responsibilities, Joe, but if there's something you can maybe take a look at, I mean, it'd be nice to.
I will ask.
Thank you. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, now is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Passero. Is there, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is our item F. If there are any public, I'm sorry, we're still under other matters before the board this time. Any other matters? Ms.
I
Hamud?
just want to address like the preamble, if we can have time to discuss, because I know we submitted our recommendation to the commission, and maybe like one of the, I'm sorry, Joey.
I'm sorry, just to give you an update, I checked on it yesterday, and that's, it's basically in process right now. It has not, come to the committee, basically to the commission. It'll be on the committee level first, and then to full board, but it's still in process on the staff level at this point, so, but it is in process,
Okay.
so.
Mr. Slizak, do we know a time frame or how long that process?
We don't have a time frame yet, so.
So my recommendation, maybe we should communicate with the committee to make it clear, like that the preamble is not something that the ethics board can enforce, and if there's something that they want us to review, to be part of that section 40,
Ms.
just to make it clear for the future.
Ms. Hamud, I think I see Ms. Johnson present. I think since she's poked her nose in, we're going to ask her to come forward. Ms. Johnson, Happy New Year. Thank you for being here. We're actually just discussing some issues that are under your concern. Thank you again for being here. Happy New Year again to you. And we are just discussing some of the recommendations we submitted for the changes to the ethics ordinance, and we just wanted to get some further feedback of where we are in the process, how long is that process going to take, and how soon will we have some sort of feedback on any implementation.
So through the chair, good morning. I have not had that discussion with the chairwoman, so I personally don't know what our process as far as timing will be. Staff obviously has other items. It's in process right now. I can't tell you right now definitively when that will be processed or the timing of it, but at some point, this body will get notified of our process and where we are before it goes to committee, so that you can be present to speak to it if you so desire.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions of Ms. Johnson at this time from any board members? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. Okay, Ms. Hamud, were your questions answered?
It's just like, I was wondering, with the rest of, the board member, if we should add to those recommendations something about the preamble. I can't remember that we added anything in the recommendation that we sent, just to make it clear that that the preamble is basically non-enforced, or it's not gonna be reviewed by the ethics board. Whatever the ethics violation, this is what the board gonna basically review.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought we touched on that
I
when we were
know-
making the proposed changes. I thought we had touched on the preamble.
I don't think we, as I recall, Mr. Chair, that we addressed a statement saying that the preamble was unenforceable. Now, I've not seen that necessarily in legislation elsewhere. I'm not sure.
Dr. Carnell.
One way we may consider addressing this is that on the form that people use to write a complaint, that we specify, list the violation, starting with section X, move through section Y. And that part, it does not include the preamble.
Can we change and add that language in there, Mr. Williams? Just,
In the ordinance or in
just
the,
in the complaint process, letting them know that, because it is somewhat misleading when they look at the preamble and it says, it covers a wide range of things. And I think I had addressed this in the past, the chair had addressed this, that it's somewhat misleading because it covers a wide range of areas. And if a person cites that, then for us to tell the person that, well, the preamble doesn't really have any relevance to the ethics ordinance itself, we need to have something in place to let them know that.
well, I think that's certainly something that we should look into. I don't know if the process entailed us revising the complaint form with the revisions to the ordinance, and I'm not sure even how that process works or has been done historically. I see Ms. Johnson is moving, so perhaps she.
Good morning, Felicia Johnson, Commission Counsel. So the complaint form that you currently have was drafted by Corp Counsel on behalf of this body. So it was at this body's discretion. It was not something I believe that the commission did, so you are able to make modifications to that if you so desire.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you. Ms. Lucero.
We, as a board, we've determined that the preamble is too ambiguous or vague to be enforced. So perhaps we should include something on the form that, that needs like an alphanumeric, that requires the alphanumeric section. Make that very clear in the form. And that those sections have to be cited, and that the preamble is a communication that expresses the spirit of the ordinance, but is not enforceable because it's too vague.
Dr. Carnell.
The form currently states that you must list at least one standard of prohibited. So it's there, but it's just not explicit. So maybe we can take that language and make it more explicit, citing the sections that are applicable.
And as the chair, I would just suggest if we were to do that, we may cut down on some of the inquiries and complaints coming in, because at least it gives everyone a clear idea of what they should be listing. How soon could we do that? How soon could we implement that language? Obviously, I wouldn't want to have a full meeting to address the language. Is that something that, Mr. Williams, you can draft up some language and get out to the board members for some sort of approval to be added?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, if there's any concerns from the board members, we can address that at this time. If the board members are okay with Mr. Williams adopting some form of language and sending it out to the board before it's officially added to the complaint forms, if that's something that the board is willing to consider at this time. Is there a motion to accept that?
Yeah, I'm
So
fine.
moved.
I'll put the motion for Mr. Williams to draft the change to the form.
Ms. Lucero?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for that. All right, moving on to
You're
our next
welcome.
item of business, unless there is any other items, any other such matters, maybe properly before this board. I think we do have a next meeting next month.
Through the chair, in terms of scheduling next month's meeting, the third Wednesday, March 18th, as of right now, the room is available. So if that's the will of the board, March 18th, 9 a.m., Wednesday, March 18th, 9 a.m.
Okay.
So,
Does anyone have a problem with that schedule, March 18th?
I do, but if I'm the only one, you still will have a quorum, or you should have a quorum.
Okay, this time we're going to keep that date for March 18th, which should be the third Wednesday of the month, I believe. Okay, are there any other matters that may be properly submitted before this board this time? All right, moving on to our next item, which is public comments, item F. If there's any public comments at this time, Ms. Hammoud.
Sorry, because March 18th, I am out of town as well.
Okay. Why don't we keep that date, and we'll see if we have a quorum on that date. I know that may conflict with some people's schedule. If we don't have a quorum, then we'll address it at that time. Okay. Okay. You're welcome. So is there any public comments at this time? Okay, moving on to the next item of our agenda, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I put motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Support, Mr. Chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All opposed? So moved. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.